but you can see now. I saw today a product that creates banners for events. Oh, I see Mike is here. Cool. Let's see. Hello.
Hi. Hello, Mike.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you and we see you perfectly. We are live. Welcome to our event.
Oh, wow. Hey.
Here you are. Really nice to connect with you. What time is it for you?
10 a.m.
Okay, so you are starting the day. Nice.
I've got 2 kids. I've started the day hours ago.
Oh, okay. So you're just like middle day now.
That's it. Second coffee.
Yeah, second. Oh, only second. I'm at my fourth and I should stop right here. But yeah, I'm really happy that we can finally have you here. Let me just jump right in. Can we start with a short introduction about you?
Yeah, sure. I'll try to keep it brief. Let's see. I grew up in hospitality, and then I was at Filterbox. We were in the first ever Techstars class in Boulder, Colorado. So I was able to kind of witness how that startup community grew there. And then I was at News Corporation, which is 20th Century Fox, Wall Street Journal, teaching journalists how to use Twitter back in the day. The iPad was just launching, so helping journalists and media come on to the Web 2 world. So I spent, I don't know, a good 12, 15 years in Web 2, helping companies use the collaboration tools that we know and use, love today. And I was honestly pushing remote work way before COVID, and I was like the remote work guy. And then COVID happened, and I think we kind of swung a little bit to the other side of the pendulum. And then that's why I started EmpireDAOs, because we had a kind of a magical one day of like 80 of us all working on the same thing in person. And I was like, wow, this is the magic. This is what we're all been missing. And so that's kind of what inspired EmpireDAO, was to, as the guy who was pushing remote work, to say, hey, we all need to get back in person and do all that. So a brief journey of my background and how we got here.
And before we dive into the story of EmpireDAO, I also wanted to ask you, and you just started to answer a little bit, where does your personal interest for DAO and maybe Web3, where did this all come from?
Yeah. I think back in, I'm going to go back to the late 2000s, when, it's funny because I talked to a lot of 20 somethings and they're like, oh, Web 2 is this. I'm like, no, you have no idea. Back then we had these same ideals. Like, we were going to change the world. We were going to make everything verifiable. It was going to be the best. So the idea of having online communities has always been in my ethos. Even back in the 90s, I used to start online forums and chats with my buddies in high school and whatnot. Like, that was the community manager back then, if that makes sense. And then I had a startup 2 years ago, and I got into Bitcoin around 2013 or so. And so I've always kind of followed around. I hosted a show called FinTech Friday within BNY Mellon. So I was streaming live to our 50,000 employees. Maybe 1,000 would tune in. And I was interviewing different founders and whatnot, and just people in the crypto ecosphere. And when I really saw the NFT projects and the ability to kind of have a community, but also see the upside of it, you're part of these Reddit communities where you've built them for years, and for what? Like, it's great. There's a lot for building that, but like, the company rewarded or the advertisers rewarded off of the work you did. And to see how NFTs and then ultimately DAOs of this co-owned concept could help facilitate that ownership was like, it clicked immediately. I remember I was jogging and I was listening to a podcast on like why DAOs are important now. And I was just like, I stopped and I like went home and I just was like, okay, I get it. I get this is going to change everything. And I've been working on that was 2 years ago. And I haven't stopped being obsessed with DAOs and with the concept of it. And even I'm in a Brooklyn condo. We've got 29 units in our building. I'm the president of our building. And it's kind of like a DAO in the sense of we all own, we all want it to go up. We have a community, but it's completely inefficient. And to be like, oh, wow, if we just plugged in someone's NFT and then that has all their financial, communication, voting, all the infrastructure that we already use, and we could do that in real time, this can kind of upgrade how we live everywhere. And so I've just been obsessed for the last couple of years and working on DAO specifically.
And so how did your can I say obsession or really deep interest into DAO led you to create EmpireDAO?
It was kind of an accident. It was supposed to be a side project, and it just kept picking up and picking up. We're down air quotes at this point. Our idea is we've built a community, we've built the brand, is to be able to buy and own the spaces that we work and live in. Going back to that one day, Reciprocal Ventures sponsored this like 1 day meetup where we all had workspace for a day. And that was kind of what inspired it. Like at the end of it, I was like, hey, who wants to do this again? Everyone raised their hand. Let's do it permanently. And like that night was how we started EmpireDAO. And I think there was like 10 of us on the original Telegram channel. And I think we had 15 versions of the deck. And it was just too democratic at that point. It was too decentralized. And about a month in, I was like, hey, do you guys mind? Like, I have a complete background in co-working spaces. I have a complete background in all of this. Do you mind if I take over? Everyone's like, no, go for it. Like, go build it. And so that was kind of a point of centralization, which I don't regret at all. I was like, all right, this is something that needs to be done, and I need to focus full time on it. And that's when it was like, okay, to get to a DAO, we can't. And I was a board member of the Monkey DAO, which is a Solana project. And it's like, okay, we can't really start with 600 people voting on everything to get going. So this concept of like working towards a DAO, and I'm a firm believer in the startup ecosystem and the VC backed ecosystem. So like getting that to be able to create DAOs is kind of I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but the idea was the one day sparked the and we've been building it since.
It's really interesting because in the introduction of the event, Dimitar, who is much more into those topics than me, was really explaining how DAO and co-working are really interesting, because co-working is about, community and bringing people together in a physical space. So somehow having DAO plugged to it is really interesting. And I know that many operators today are kind of like looking into how they can implement somehow DAO into their co-working communities, which I think for us, it's amazing to have you here. And it also leads me to my next question, which is, how does having a physical space, so in the shape of a co-working / incubator, if I'm not mistaken, supports your overall mission with EmpireDAO?
Yeah, it's absolutely critical. And if those of you have been following along, we actually just kind of ended season 1 with our initial location. But the in-person was everything. I mean, we did some things that were a little, I don't want to say over the top, but like we had a physical newspaper called the EmpireDAO. And in the printout, we'd run around the halls and hand them out, and fresh DAO, come down and get your DAO, and people would meet for coffee and look at it. But we didn't put it online at all. We would take a picture of it, blur it, and then you have to come in to see it, right? These are the collisions that can only happen in person. And then the whiteboard session, we had tons of whiteboards around, and those were always full and always being used. And like, you can't replicate the accidental, hey, you should talk to whoever real quick, and come over here on Zoom. It just really can't happen. And then start breaking out into a whiteboard, and then go grab a coffee and really get to know each other. These kind of interactions just can't be replicated online in a way. So it's fundamental to what we're doing overall. Our next step is to, work directly with a lot of chains, but it's always going to have this kind of in-person idea behind it that really perpetuates more business, more relationships, and more DAOs.
And another thing, I was browsing through your website before preparing the event, and I came across a few terms I would love for us to discuss. And the first one is in real life NFT permissioned community. And you might not know, but a lot of the people who are watching the event right now are quite novice with those terms. So for us, it's really important. No, it's fine. It's fine. That's why we are putting this event together, because we really want people from the co-working industry who are interested in this to learn. So that's why I picked this term in particular, because it's a lot of words that people might not get. So when you talk about an in real life NFT permission community, what does that mean concretely?
Sure. So the way to think of it by the way, IRL, so it's Ireland. I don't know why we use that, but in real life.
Oh, sorry. And
Yeah.
you see, even me, I'm a no.
Yeah,
Sorry.
IRL is in real life. No, you got it right. It's
I got it.
confusing.
Sorry, I thought I was wrong. I was like, oh my god. Okay.
No, you got it. It's a confusing term. It's an acronym, insider acronym. But a permission, and I would think of it no different than a gym membership or a library membership, right? Like you've got a card, it's got a code to it that you can scan in and access the library or the gym or what it might be. Now, if this is an NFT, it's no different. You're like, great, it's the same thing. I've got a QR code on my phone. It unlocks the door. I now have access to the building. Why do we need to do this as an NFT? There's a lot more functionality that you can get to in that state. So NFT permission, it means nothing other than a membership card. That's it. Think of it like that way. But now the feature set, I guess, could be, let's say you do have a desk and you want to lease out your NFT for 24 hours and kind of Airbnb your desk for a week. You're going to the South by Southwest and you're like, I'm not going to be there that week. I want to put my membership, and I could use a smart contract, which you could do with NFTs, and say, all right, I'm going to give it to this person for 7 days at this price and lease it out to them. It could also be tied to your actual identity too. So in New York, and I imagine other cities, there's a bit of security when you're going into bigger buildings. And it's like, okay, great. It's your membership pass, but it also is tied to your actual identity. And you can't fake that if you have a verified NFT that's been verified. So there's a little more features to it, but it's no different than just a membership pass to a building or a co-working space.
And when we talk about NFTs, can people come with any of the NFTs they own, or do you have your own NFT collection that people need to mint or get somehow? How does that work?
Yeah, you'll get the membership NFT, and then we can apply access to it. So it could be the year or a month. And we could also, again, just like a membership, go into the NFT, change the data on it and say, all right, it only has access for these hours or these dates, or it ends on January 31st, and then your access is gone. So it would be the NFT that's based on the building itself, or the global community if it was a global network like gyms are.
And so just again, I really want to make sure people get it. If I'm a member and I want to become a part of the EmpireDAO community, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the way it functions, I go on your website, I get an NFT that goes into my wallet. And then with that, how do I enter the building? Basically,
Yeah.
I can just come and be like, hey, this is my NFT.
There's a couple ways. So, I mean, like the idea is ours, we want them all to be 24/7 access. So it's kind of a scanner there, and you scan your QR code that's embedded in your NFT, and it unlocks the door and gives you access.
Oh, okay.
And then your security, if that building required KYC, know your customer, which is your photo ID, then it would show up on the screen for security to see as well on the other side. Whether that's an in-person doorman or a virtual doorman, they would be able to see your access from there. Now, one big feature I think of all of this is the fact of ownership of the co-working space itself or anything. So the idea that EmpireDAO, if you buy in and it's got a token, let's call it the Empire token, to this particular building, and I'm there for 2 or 3 years. But since there's such a demand for this place and it goes up because I've kept it clean and I've got great events and like people want to be here, when I sell and I actually move, it actually might be worth more than I bought it for. So there's a concept of this ownership. You know, we talked about it a lot of like, hey, everyone in the community owns it, but there's no actual ownership of the building or the space itself. And having an NFT tied to it allows you to, or a token, I should say, allows you to be an owner of the upside of the community. And that's the big difference between all of these. I genuinely think corporations, governments, universities are going to start moving to this a little bit, where you don't really want to go to work that much because of the commute and all that. But if you actually owned it and were able to sell and you saw the upside, or even if you just broke even, you're still having the ownership. It changes your mind a lot, right? Even if you have stock in a company, you're like, oh, like I might, I have some of that. If you own the place that you work in every day, it changes your mentality. And what we found is all the program that was happening at EmpireDAO, there was movie nights, yoga on the roof, sip and paint sessions. They were all run by the community. We didn't be like, oh, that was a great event. I'm like, I don't even know what event happened yesterday, because the community, since they felt ownership of it, they felt the ability they wanted to make it a great place. There's kind of an intrinsic financial value to it, but it's more of, it's a place they want to be, and they want the value to go up. So they make it a better place for everyone.
And how do you then bring everybody? You guys use a Discord, or do you use any particular tool for the community to be like, hey guys, we have this event coming up, you can join in if you want to? Yeah,
we use Telegram. It's kind of the go-to for the Web3 crypto world, for communities. And that's where we house it. We do have a Discord, which has been dormant. We haven't been using it. So we Telegram's enough. We find the mobile experience for our community in particular, it's a very mobile, and the user experience is better mobile on Telegram than it is Discord. So that's kind of why we're there.
Speaking of your community, and you started to hint us a little bit at the beginning when you said they're like in the 20s, who are they? Like, what do they work on? And like, are they all very techie, or do you have people who are just interested and they want to learn through you guys?
So it's a mostly about 40% founders and then there's a big investor contingent who are curious to find deal flow so they can, look for founders to invest in. There's a big developer community as well. And then there's a big artist community. So artists and creators is something we focus. We had an artist in residence program. We had 25% of the building dedicated to art. It's one of the big separators that I find a lot of tech hubs don't focus on. You need designers, you need tech, you need design. It's constantly that we found that artists and developers really have a very similar mindset as creators and builders that they are. So that's a big part of our community as well. And again, it's kind of been our secret sauce. People are like, why do people? I'm like, because it's not an office. It's more than that. It's culture. We had comedians, we had art shows, we had kind of constantly these things going because they're part of the community. So ideally it's 25% founders, 25% developers, 25% investors, and 25% artists. And it's roughly about a combination of those, but it kind of skews depending on when we do polls and whatnot.
And when you talk about those percentages, are you able in any way to actually measure or like monitor who's coming and curate, or is it a little bit difficult?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it was pretty easy that in real time of the actual physical members when we had the space. We had about 300 people a day, and we were able to kind of see through the events and whatnot. But no, it's hard because it's especially in this world, there's a lot of anonymity, which is a big draw for a lot of people. They want to remain anonymous, but when you come in person, you lose that, right? So we're one of the few Web3 communities that we have to know who you are. So we kind of have an advantage over most communities where they're like, some might have 10 accounts in one community just because they want more voting. And there's all that kind of problems with anonymity. We don't really have that. So we're able to kind of see the info. And since it's an invite, it's not an invite only, it kind of is an invite only process. We kind of see who's coming in and then keep tally on those percentages. And they're rough, obviously, but like we have a pretty good handle on the data.
And another thing I saw on your website that sparked curiosity in me, or at least I would love for you to try to explain to our audience now. You said that EmpireDAO is centered around decentralized finance and blockchain. What does that mean concretely?
So decentralized finance is essentially when you don't need a government or a corporate entity to house your finance. So there's a lot of features and bugs with that. Meaning if you self-custody your own money, there's, you can think of a bank now. Like if a bank they have in Europe and in the US particularly, they mostly have good protections around if they were to get robbed, like you still have access to it. Although they do go down and your money can disappear. There's exchanges, which a lot of people hear these horror stories in crypto, which is it's essentially replicating a bank. They don't do their finances right. They go under, you lose your money. That's centralized finance. Decentralized finance is when you have the ability to custody your own money. And if you lose it, you lose it. There's no one to call. There's nobody to help you. But then there's also kind of pooling money together, right? So these banks might offer X amount of percentage for having a pool of funds. So if you have a savings account, they're using that and they're investing it and they're giving you a little tiny fraction back. Whereas a decentralized finance, if 1,000 of us or 100 of us or even 10 of us said, hey, let's pull this together, we can kind of control what the investments are, but there's no ownership to it. So you can think about it as an individual of controlling your own money and then replicating all the financial products that we know and use, whether that's insurance or investments, and pulling that together without the government or the corporate interaction. So that's decentralized finance, I'd say, at a high level.
Actually, you made it very clear, I have to say.
And you asked for something else too. It's decentralized finance.
No, I was also asking you about blockchain.
I see.
But I think you also kind of answered along those lines. So you want to add something?
No, I would think of those blockchain, crypto. Don't even worry about those words. I mean, like it's hard because we have Twitter now. We have this public forum where we can all see things building. But when we were building JavaScript, which is what we use for Instagram and TikTok, like no one was speculating or talking about the technologies for it. So what we're doing is not really that different. So it's good to know a little bit about the technology, but I would ignore the idea of calling it crypto or blockchain is so much irrelevant when it's really just a new way of banking and finance, and it's a new way of membership, and it's a new way of ownership.
And I know that in our audience today, we do have people who are thinking to start their own DAOs for their co-working spaces. What would be your advice to them on how to start? Because they said when I was preparing the event that they feel very lost with this. So what would be the starting point for you? I
would start later the DAO, if that makes sense. I kind of touched on this earlier. I would build the community first, right? The community is your moat. It's the most important thing. Build that up. If everyone has interest in this concept of DAO, it doesn't have to be everyone. Because again, it's no different than if you look at communes or different things of community-owned things. These things already exist today. But do we have the people that are willing to do it? Okay, now that's more important than creating the DAO infrastructure. And okay, should I register it in the Marshall Islands or Wyoming or wherever these entities are? And how are we going to do voting? All of that, in my opinion, should be done secondary. Make sure you have the community up front and the board of the, it's just like any other community. There's going to be, a select few who really kind of do the work and push it forward, are willing to go and put the community on this format. Because the old way, it still works. It's just not nowhere near as efficient as a DAO concept. So if you already have a great community, you're already winning. Then it's like, okay, let's do this DAO infrastructure. Let's try it with 2 or 3 of us. Let's try the voting. Let's tinker with it before we actually roll it out to the community or do anything. And the first of any of these is experience. So I would join another DAO and participate in that to see how their voting works, what the benefits of being a member are. It's because it's so varied from some of them that you have just, once a year voting on something that's kind of insignificant. It's still technically a DAO, to you have your say in everything and we want to hear your ideas and we need, so participating in other DAOs is definitely the best way to inspire you to go, okay, this is how I want to run our DAO. And this would apply well for our community in this co-working space in this location.
And another question that popped up when we were preparing the event was about generating revenue through a DAO. So how does that look like?
Yeah, let's see. I mean, for co-working, in terms of what we did, we would charge for the space itself, and that was kind of just leveling it out. So that really wasn't much of a. It generated revenue. I wouldn't say it was a profit concept. We did a lot of events which would generate revenue, and then also in our case with the art sales and whatnot. So we would have 20% commissions for the events, for the things that were sold from within the building. We do comedy show and have tickets, $25 for the seats for the comedy show kind of thing. So a lot of it was around the in-person type of revenue. Ultimately, though, if you are a true DAO and token based, and this is what we're building towards, is we're now to apply to be into the new EmpireDAO locations. We're going to help accelerate and incubate your company and also take a percentage of the company on the way in, so that we now have kind of a treasury as the DAO itself. So now, as an EmpireDAO member, you might own just a little tiny fraction of all of these companies. And as they, over the time, become either profitable or IPO or sell or have a token base themselves, you kind of have the revenue through those as well. So it's kind of building assets through the DAOs is kind of what our ultimate goal is, not necessarily revenue, but more of asset growth is how we're looking at it.
That's really interesting. And it's also somehow a good bridge to my next question to you, because if you reflect a little bit, because you just talked about the future and what you're going to focus on, but if you reflect a little bit on everything that has happened since you started EmpireDAO, what would you say has been your biggest challenge? There can be more than one also, by the way.
Yeah. No, I think it's a balance of community growth, of being open. I preach the openness and inclusion and having everybody in, versus being really sustainable financially. That's kind of been the really tough thing, is because by opening it up to university students and to just everybody, it's been wonderful. We've had all these incredible people come in that we wouldn't expect, and they've been valuable community members. And if there was a ticket to get in or a price, most of them wouldn't have came at all. They would have been deterred in some sense. But at the same time, it was kind of financially hard to sustain, our first particular location, because we kind of gave it away so much. So really finding that balance has been tough. And then if you're in the digital world and used to creating digital products, and then going back into brick and mortar and all the management problems that come with heat and air conditioners and broken doors and facilities, just facilities management in general. I think what we would do is definitely we'll have someone else manage that because we did want to control the experience and make it really good, which I don't really regret doing that. But at the same time, we were unable to focus on the NFT and DAO feature set that we really wanted to, because we were so busy managing the space itself. So the more that you could have that managed, the more you can, I think, do creative things of this type of community ownership and voting and whatnot, if you're not worried about kind of the nuts and bolts of the brick and mortar.
And my last question to you, because you said season 1 ended, and I should say you have an amazing, the story on the internet and like the press that you got around EmpireDAO is really cool. For people who are not aware, I should also say that you were located on top of the Supreme store, right? In New York. So do you already know where season 2 will take place, or not yet?
So it might be a little different than season 1.
Okay.
I think what's happening. So for those not familiar, in the Web3 blockchain world, there's the different chains, and they want to grow their community and their user base. So we hosted a lot of them in our space, but now they also have their own spaces. So what we're going to be doing is they're going to be giving us space within their already existing HQs or theirs, and then we're going to have an open community EmpireDAO section of it. So you'll apply if you want to work in there full time, and we'll help accelerate and grow those companies in the different locations. Now, for a full-on spot for EmpireDAO, right now Tokyo is kind of front running the pack in terms of what makes sense for us most. Shibuya City particularly, being they really want to bring this community there. They're working on a visa program where it would be 3 months where you can be there and work, and they want to be, again, in New York, about, before EmpireDAO came, it wasn't known as a crypto Web3 hub. Because of EmpireDAO, it now is. So Tokyo is saying, hey, we want you to do what you did there, and can you do it here? So that, we're chatting about that. You need the density for what we did. You need a lot of culture. You need a lot of artists. You need the density. So that makes sense for us. It's not you're hearing this first, but Tokyo is leading the pack.
Exciting times are coming. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mike, for being with us today. I feel you really, as I said, I'm not as aware as Dimitar and you on those topics, and you made it so crystal clear for me. So I hope it's the same for people who are watching this. And also, thanks so much for being so open about it. One of the things I did wanted to ask you last was, how can people keep up with what you're doing at EmpireDAO? Where are you the most active, sharing about your progress and where you're moving, how you're moving forward?
Sure. Yeah, I just checked my Twitter in the chat, and also put my LinkedIn there as well. Feel free to connect with me there. And just say a little background of who you are on LinkedIn. But yeah, those are the two places where I talk about those the most. And I've been a little quiet because we're in a transitional period, but there'll be things coming out. But both Twitter and LinkedIn are where you can find me most.
Amazing. Well, Mike, thank you so much for being with us today. Enjoy the rest of your day, which is not morning, but it's kind of like your second day after taking care of the kids. Maybe that's what we call it.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. See you. Bye.